Welcome back to the Cards and Beards Dealing Seconds podcast with your Cards and Beards crew. I'm Chris. Unfortunately, I don't have anybody else with me, but I have two awesome guys. Well, technically, I do have another Cards and Beards member. We want to officially welcome John, aka CNC Deck Cut Creations, as the newest member of the Cards and Beards crew. This is our warm welcome. That's what we do with cards. John,
drum roll,
whatever you want to say. John, welcome to the crew, man.
Thank you.
And also, we want to welcome Rich, aka Intracuts. Thank you for coming on to the podcast, Rich.
Absolutely.
How's it going? How you doing today, first and foremost? What you been up to? Anything interesting besides cards?
Well, just cards, work. My pup's going to be walking around here. I don't know if you can hear him clicky clacking all over the floor, but he was all quiet until I started talking. Now he's like, "Oh, there's something going on. I think I need to." So if you hear a random doorbell, it's him, and I got to let him out. He's got his own doorbell there.
Hey, he's belching. That's even better. You don't have to worry about it.
Oh yeah. No, just getting ready for Cardistry Con coming up. Here
nice.
In what is that? A few days?
Yeah, isn't it on like Thursday, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Are you guys?
Does it start? I think it actually starts Friday. Friday,
Yes.
Saturday, Sunday, and there's a bunch of pre-stuff going on Thursday. Like I know Henry's got a little pizza party going on over there. I'm gonna hit up Art of Play. I've not been there yet myself, so I'm looking forward to that. And outside of that, I've just been trying to cut away for the show.
I hear you. I mean, CardistryCon, I would love to go, even though it's in California, but I'm just like, I just can't take the time off, unfortunately. I just had a trip to Texas. I saw my daughters in Texas this last week, and I was like, all right, CardistryCon or kids?
So you're a little ways away from that one as well. It's quite the trip.
Yeah. I mean, one day I will do CardistryCon or at least some type of convention. You know, I'm also a big nerd, so as John probably has seen, I'm a huge Magic the Gathering nerd. So I'm waiting for like Magic Fest, what they call, to come to New York so I can play against people. But that's just me. I'm, would love to go to CardistryCon.
Sorry, Rich, are you taking cuts down there to show or sell, or is it just something you carry around on your person?
A little of both. I do not carry cuts around on my person. I'm always afraid that they're going to get damaged, but when I ship them out and they go out via UPS or the mail and they get to the other side unscathed, I'm pretty sure I could walk around with, a deck in my pocket and not have to worry about that. I do have some cuts that I'm taking down that are going to kind of be introductory / exclusive to CardistryCon. I'm playing around taking some other decks down just as like a showpiece kind of a thing. I actually have those hummingbirds. I need to talk to Marvelous Decks and see if he'll let me take them down, because technically they're his. So I'll probably have those coming down. I've just been trying to cut away, and my original hope was to have 2 bricks down there. That was an ambitious goal, because I only found out I was going about 6 weeks ago or so.
Oh, damn.
And so then I was like, okay, well, realistically, a brick would be good. And now I'm like, all right, well, I have at least 1. So
always if one's good, 2 is always better. That's the saying.
Yes. I actually just finished up my second one. What was my first one? Oh, the first one was the Memento Mori. So that one's going down.
Nice.
I just finished up my second one. I guess I can show you guys. I have not officially taken any pictures and posted it yet. I did tease it, however. A sneak peek just for you guys. Let's see if my phone will allow me to do this. I did put up a little reel involving.
Okay.
Oh yeah, phones. Nice. I was wondering. I remember talking about this with you last time we chatted in one of your lives. I think you had said you were going to cut it up.
Yeah, and then that was, I don't know how long ago that was, like 12 years ago. And so I finally decided to sit down and get it done. And unfortunately, I mean, if you've had a cut deck in your hand and you've actually had a chance to look at it versus how the pictures are displayed, there's no way to really get around how much better it looks in hand than it does even with the video. So with that being said, the sneak peek, I think I don't even know how many layers I had in this, but I have a ton of layers going on.
Oh, damn.
Oh, yeah.
See,
Nice.
I might
If
not
you
be a
can
fan of
see,
the deck. I'm not a fan of the deck, but that cut is really clean.
I've got
Super
the
intricate.
octopuses on different levels.
That
I've got a whole
super
bunch of stuff
clean.
going on.
Nice. I love how
Nice.
The
that
dancer
love how that
floating in the
fence looks
middle.
like that.
Looks great.
And
Um,
that's a lot of detail on that one.
Yeah.
there, I sat down, and I think that's why it took me so long because I kept looking at it and going, "Yeah, I don't know about that one."
Yeah.
You just want to add, tweak
Yeah,
a little bit, add a little bit, tweak a little bit, you know. I mean, same thing when John did my Harry Potter cuts that I have literally hanging on a fractal plaque above my couch. I had I commissioned him to do all 4 cuts. And when he sent me the first one, I was like floored at how amazing it looked. But then the second one came in, and then the third. And then I'm like, how do you continuously one up yourself? You know, taking like one design and trying to imagine 4 different renditions of it. And I'm just like,
sure.
you know, I saw pictures when he posted them online, but I'm like, in hand, like you said, it just changes. And just seeing the intricacies and the little nuances is like, holy shit, you know. And that's why I have all the respect for deck cutters because I've tried it. I suck at it. He has to go out.
That's the doorbell. Pardon me a second. All right, buddy, going out. Here, I'll just leave this door open. You can come and go as you please. Don't let the bugs in. All right, we'll solve that here.
Yeah,
I
but
don't. I'm not sure when. When does this actually air? When do you actually post up this?
So typically what we do with our podcast, we record on Mondays, and I try to get it up on YouTube by Wednesday, Thursday, the latest. Just because
Okay.
it takes me time to, because yes, we record, and this is a little sneak peek for, you know, a little insider tip for anybody watching us. We record all these on Zoom, and then I in post take care of all the overlays. I take care of all of the editing. You know, any intros, outros we want to do, I have to take care of that. And then uploading to YouTube takes a little bit of time, as everybody knows who's done YouTube. So the longer the interview, the longer it takes me to upload. And I don't have the best upload speed in my apartment, or best internet speed. So, you know, usually by Thursday, it's usually up, maybe Friday. But
Okay.
latest Friday, but definitely Thursday for sure.
I was only asking because I have another. I have a super top secret deck that I
Ooh.
cut, but if it's going up that soon, then I don't even want to tease it.
Oof.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll just
Don't leak
say
it.
I'll just
Oh.
say it's it's not something that you're gonna find other people doing this
Ooh.
particular deck.
Ooh. That's interesting. Now,
Mystery.
yeah, the mission. I'm like,
Yeah,
what?
no, I'm curious.
Same. I'm like, what wouldn't people do? But I'm just like, I try to figure out. Let me ask you guys a question because you guys are both cutters, and I have both of you here. When you look at a deck, do you guys plan out the way you want the cut to look, or do you cut a couple cards and then as you're cutting, do you start altering it? Do you have like a set plan? I would ask.
You can go ahead and go first, Rich.
No, I was about to say you should go first.
That's all you.
Oh.
That's all you, man. Hey, yeah, that's all you.
Yeah. All right. So a little of both. Typically, what I'll do when I will. So this isn't any shocker or anything for the Cardistry Con. I am working on another gas
This
lamp.
is gas lamps. Nice.
Nice.
So looking at the back, and I've done this deck of, well, I did it for the 25 Days of Christmas. This was part of that for Art of Play. So I've already done it 5 or 6 times. So it's always a challenge to come back to a deck that you've already done because I really push to try and make every deck that I do different. Even if it's only 1 or 2 cards, you should be able to take a look at it and know that it's not just, oh, this is the way that I cut this deck. That being said, I usually will look at a deck and decide what I want to be brought out of it. Because some of the decks, there are a ton of details, like overload of details. And let's go, a Red Fox was one of them. Red Fox playing cards. There was a ton of stuff going on in that. And so I really had to figure out what my base thought was of what I wanted to bring forward, what I thought I could push back, and then what I thought I could realistically do. I will typically start with 2 or 3 cuts and see how those layers are, and I'll layer them up and kind of stack them up to see how they're looking. But my vision is always subject to change. Sometimes I'll see something that I didn't notice before, and I really want to bring that in. Other times, I mean, I've spent 45 plus minutes on a single card, cutting it out, and then when I get to the end of it, I'm like, I can't use this at all, and then it goes in like the discard pile. Like it's kind of frustrating that way. So sometimes my ideas work out, but I think that um, if you're gonna do this, and I hate to say it this way, but if you're gonna do this organically and just take a look at it and not have like a computer help you figure out how you're going to cut it, you have to adapt to what you're doing, just because sometimes you try something and you try it 3 or 4 or 5 times and you go, you know what, that's not going to work. So how do I change this to make it look the way that I want it to? And honestly, some of the cuts I feel are okay. Some of the cuts I feel are great. And it's always kind of funny for me because every time I get done with the cut that I'm like, you know, this is all right. That tends to be the one that everyone like freaks out about. And I'm like, well, okay, well, obviously I don't understand my own art. I don't have an eye for it. So who knows?
No, it's interesting because like you just said, some people will love it, some people won't. You might be like I'm the same way when it comes to, like, for example, because I'm also a power lifter. So I lift things up and put them down. Basically, that's just, stupid phrase. But I'll record myself, and I'm like you, like, okay, I think I did an okay lift, and then I show like my friends or my former coaches and whatnot, and they're like, dude, that was way too easy. I'm like, really? Like, I don't understand myself sometimes. Um, but also, what got you involved in cards in the first place? Were you a collector at first? Did you like fooling around or fidget with cards?
Wow, let me go way back. So once upon a time when I was in fourth grade, we had this thing called Flash, and it was, hold on, now he's barking. Oh my gosh.
Gotta love the puppers. Gotta love puppies.
Yeah, he's only 6 months old, so he's still trying to figure everything out. He usually doesn't bark, but now that I'm here, he's like, "Yeah, I want to be a part of this thing too." Um, so back in fourth grade, we did this thing called Flash, and it was like an after school. I don't know what it stood for, some crazy acronym. And what I did was magic, and I got taught a couple of like card tricks. And so I kind of went on with that, and I kind of played through it through middle school, and then I kind of dropped it out. I was a band geek all through high school. Like I played football one year, but I was like the drumline captain, and I was anything to do. I played symphonic band, I played orchestra. Everything I did was music. Fast forward a bunch, I was a firefighter out in a rural area, and if anyone's ever messed around with structure gloves, which is what they use whenever they go inside to fight fires, that there's really not much dexterity that you can do with gloves. And usually we have drills that we put together to try and keep our dexterity with these giant gloves that we go into burning houses with. So I wanted to find something that I could use my hands and continue my dexterity in some kind of a weird way. And I actually came across Chris Ramsey before he was a full-time YouTuber, when he was just doing like cardistry um,
With
tutorials.
Illusionist.
I think he was on his own by this point. It was just his YouTube, but he was
Okay.
he may have still been with Illusionist, but I know that like he was just kind of like doing these little videos, and that's when he was like, "Oh yeah, check this out," and it was a Blue Monarchs, and I was like, that is a crazy looking deck of cards. Like I've never seen anything like that. Didn't know that those things existed. Went on, bought one. I was like, oh my gosh, $10. Who would spend this much on a deck of cards?
If only you knew.
Little did I know. $10. And so I got that, and I was like, I'm going to practice. I love these things. I'm going to go with it. And I just didn't have the time or patience to sit and just, work the cards and become a cardist in all of that, because I had young kids running around. I had 4 kids in the house, and it was just like, I don't have time to just sit and do. So I had some practicing with it, and eventually what it ended up doing was going to collecting. I had found, shoot, now I can't remember the name of the deck. but I found a deck of cards on Kickstarter and back to that, and I got it, and I was like, oh, this is really cool. Even though I look back on it now and I'm like, this is kind of a not the nicest quality deck, but that started, and then I kind of started looking up. I mean, now Kickstarter is full of them, but back then it was like one would pop up or two would pop up every couple months, and you would kind of see what was going on. And then I got like into Theory 11 and kind of building up my collection that way. So for sure, a collector at first. My visible collection was never that big. I've talked to people that have like $100,000 worth of cards in their collection, like, and I'm like, that is crazy for me to think about, and the amount of cards that you have. I think I'm up now, probably up to like 300, 250, 300 decks total, and honestly, most of them, at least half of them, are packed away in my garage. And then, now I go in and I'm like, my taste has changed, because now I look at what I can use to cut, and I look at a lot of the stuff that I collected, and I'm like, what was I even thinking? Like, I don't even understand why I even thought that these would be a good thing to go to.
Oh yeah, I mean we've all gone through that. I mean that's the learning curve of your collecting days. I mean myself included. I have about same about like you, Rich. I have about 300, maybe 350, about that. But a good portion of it is put away, in like boxes and like storage and whatnot here in my apartment. But yeah, everybody finds Chris Ramsey. Every person that I know is like,
Yep.
yeah, I got into cards because of Chris Ramsey, and you're like, right, it's the Chris Ramsey show. It's like, Jesus Christ, how much more can you talk about the guy? But
Yeah.
it's just crazy. But I actually have a very similar story to you as far as like dexterity goes, because like I said, I'm a power lifter. So it was about a little over a year ago. When I was lifting, I realized my dexterity in my hands, hand strength was loosening up. I couldn't grip the bar as properly as I could, especially for my deadlifts, and it was just like it was slowly rolling out of my hands. And then I was watching YouTube. I was like, oh, just messing around, and I saw cards, Chris Ramsey, just like you, and doing cardistry and stuff like that. And I'm like, wait, let me pick up a deck. And I actually got the Blue Monarchs. That was my first custom deck I ever bought. And since then, now it's like, okay, dexterity goes through the roof now, because yes, I have kids, but they don't live with me. They are in Texas, so I'm by myself in my apartment. So when I'm sitting at home watching TV, I have my coffee table full of bikes, and I'm like, all right, which color bike am I using today? And I'm just gonna fidget and fiddle and just work it. But it's just crazy to see also how our collecting and how our taste have changed over time.
Hmm.
And I mean, for you guys, especially you guys being cutters, let me ask you a question then. Being a cutter, what is when you look at decks, what is the first thing you look at in the design? I'll actually, you know what? I'm going to let John take this one because Rich had to answer the question last time.
I talked too much. That's why.
No. Trust me, it's actually awesome.
First thing I look at the design. So I mean, I collect same as you guys. I think I'm just under 400 decks now. I'm I guess a tuck slut, whatever you want to call. I'm a sucker for a beautiful tuck case. That's kind of, I guess, what draws my eye to a deck to cut first. You can see a lot of the artist's ideas and concepts in the tuck case, and they usually show more than they will on the back of a card. To kind of get, to me anyways, I feel like I get the better overall picture by looking at the tuck case. So a good design, I tend to lean more towards very symmetrical designs. I'm kind of an OCD as far as how things are laid out, that kind of stuff. I mean, even when I'm cutting cards, it's, as I'm prepping, my knives are always lined up. My finished cards are lined up. My scrap is put in a perfect pot. Like it's kind of weird, but I look for a very symmetrical design or a subject that will stand out in the deck. And that's kind of where my mind goes at first. I guess something that's going to catch your eye versus just kind of more of a basic deck of cards. It's something I can look at, cut, and then take that focal point and I guess bring it to life. That's kind of what I look for when I'm looking to cut a deck of cards. Nothing too crazy, I guess, but try to make that design, pop out or stand out kind of thing. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, it totally does. It totally does. What about you, Rich?
I have to say, initially I was the same Tux, so I was all about Theory 11 when I first started, and honestly, as is the typical thought around what I hear with Theory 11 cards, is that the cards themselves are kind of a letdown. They tend to be very monochromatic in nature, and with that, they not only monochromatic, but they don't have any shading elements. They're very like, if this is a blue and white deck, it's all blue, all white, and straight lines and things like that. Whereas, for instance, the gas amp that I'm working on it is monochromatic, but the way that it's kind of hashed out in an illustrative style, it lends itself to kind of show that there's lighting in it when there isn't. And to me, that kind of is what draws in. To his point, I kind of look for something that can be a focal point as well, even though sometimes it doesn't always present itself up front. I've had some commissioned decks where people have sent me something and I get it and I'm like, I can't believe I agreed to do this. Like, what am I even going to do with this deck, kind of a thing. And so then it becomes a challenge as to how can I make this look like art, or look cool, look like something that the buyer is going to like, and that I'm going to be happy with presenting, because I don't ever want to present a deck that just looks like crap and I'm like, okay, well, here you go. So there's very much a focal point. To the other side of that, like the Fulton's Day of the Dead, there is so much going on in that it's almost overwhelming, and trying to figure out how much of this do I want to make layers versus how much of it can I keep flat, because you can keep a lot of things flat and just pop a few things out. That is pretty hard to do, though, to make it not look like you've just kind of like phoned it in.
Yeah, like you kind of half-assed it.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't want that.
No. And designs can get lost so easy when you're cutting too. I mean, you can go from, trying to make a focal point out of something to completely burying that, and then you're 6-7 cards cut deep and you're like, holy cow, this is going to turn into something ridiculous if I don't stop. Then you got to kind of rethink it, like, okay, how can I twist this up or keep going with what my original thought was. And sometimes you end up with a half dozen or more cut cards and you're like, well, I guess I'm not going to use those guys then, change it up. Like, thank God there's 52 cards in the deck, but yeah.
I mean, and also when you guys do your art, because it's artwork what you guys do, it's art pieces, and I appreciate everything you guys do. But as you were saying before, there's also criticism. You want to make things stand out, but then you have people, they like to criticize your work, unfortunately. And it's like, I get it. Everybody's going to have criticism on certain things, but then there's criticism, and then there's trolling or being extremely mean for no reason, basically. And I don't understand that. Like, I mean, I've heard of a couple things. I don't know if you guys want to talk about it. I know you guys both have had probably like people talk about your work or talk about you guys personally for some. And I'm sorry, but to me that's just so stupid, because we're talking about pieces of paper. Like, we're talking about cards that you guys are cutting or we're fidgeting with. So I don't know if you guys want to talk about anything. You don't have to name names. You don't have to name people or things. But if you want to say a couple like personal things, maybe say, hey, how you felt about certain situations.
I think half the issue when it comes to something like that is, like you said, it's art. And I've talked to Rich on the side before. I've talked to you guys, you and Danny and all of them on the side before. But it can never be seen. You're never going to make a living off of doing it, right? It needs to be strictly a hobby. Or something you do just for the love of it. You can't go into it thinking, look, I'm only going to do this. I need to crank these out. No one can copy me. No one can do, there's only so many ways that you can cut a deck before someone's going to repeat something. And if you go into this if you go into cutting and you don't consider that, um, you probably shouldn't be doing it, to be honest. But yeah, there's I mean there's some criticism and some hate in the community, that's for sure. I think that's kind of it's going to be that way no matter what community you're in. There's always going to be something. Um,
I do
really,
feel
you
like
gotta
a lot of that though is, so there's people within the community that they either like the cuts or they don't. And like that's fine. And that's typically what I'll hear from people is, that's just not my thing, or I'm not into cuts. And like that's totally fine. You don't have to be. To your point, I feel like the criticism and the naysaying and the trolling comes from competitors, other people within the market that want to do the same thing that you're doing, and the only way that they can make themselves feel like they're doing something better than you is to just put you down. I mean, it just goes back to being in junior high and high school. You have somebody that's just
Yeah.
constantly trying to put you down just to put you
right.
down, because I
Yeah.
haven't really had issues with anybody in just the community at large. Like the community at large is just they either like them or they don't.
Yeah,
It's other cutters along the way that are either still cutting or not cutting that are honestly the ones that are the most vocal and most vicious about everything. I mean, at one point I was being threatened with lawsuits because I was cutting cards because somebody claimed that they had copyrighted the idea of cutting the cards, even though if you go back and you timestamp everything, like, and I apologize, I don't know if it's Levin or Levine, but Dan, you go to Dan, who was the original person that I ever saw first cut cards. And he did these geometrical shapes and he glues them together, and like he puts a lot of work into them, and he calls them lonely hearts, and so he always kind of has a heart in it, and like that's his thing with it. And then I started doing this and talking with some friends and figuring out, oh, yeah, I'm kind of lazy. I don't want to do the glue. And so I decided to include the tuck case and do the art. And when you go back and you look at that, it's like I was kind of the first one that really made a push to go that way. And other people are going that way. And I've always been like, you know what, that's great. Push it though. Like,
Hmm.
I want people to come out and do something. And 52 and Tuck was great at this back when he was cutting. He would do stuff, and I would look at him and go, I gotta do better than that. Like that's good. What he was doing was pushing the envelope and making it more than just, hey, look, I can cut cards too. Look what I can do.
right.
Um,
Yeah.
and but all that hate and everything was people that wanted to cut, and that's not to say, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on your part of things, but I either get people that troll and try to get me kicked out of Facebook groups and try to get me kicked out of Instagram things and whatever, or I get people that want to cut that ask me questions and like not just to figure out how I do it so that they can try and undersell me or something like that, but like literally they just want to know, hey, what's the best way to get into this? Like, how do I start? What kind of blade do I use? Like, what kind of blade do you use? How many blades you go through? What do you suggest? This and that and everything else. And I love it when people come up and want to try this stuff at home. I'm not the first one to come up with it. I'm not going to be the last one to come up with it. Um, it's something that you're either going to enjoy doing it or your hand is going to cramp up and you're going to be like, that's the one and only one I'm ever doing in my life, and I'm never doing it again.
Oh yeah. Yeah. First off, I agree with you on this one, Rich. Like, that's that old saying: a rising tide raises all ships. And I think a healthy level of competition makes you want to push yourself and actually say, okay, I did this on this deck. How can I push it even more on the next?
Right.
It's not that I'm trying to do better than someone else, but I just want to have a healthy competition. But
Right.
like you were saying, Rich, hand cramping up. I've done a couple cuts of decks, and I don't know how you guys do it. I lost feeling in my fingertip for like a good month. I was like, holy shit, you guys! I'm like, and I was sitting here like using like going through like 3 or 4 blades in one deck, and I'm like, I have my ring light above my desk, and I would have my whole cutting mat here and everything. I'm like, I can't focus that long on one thing. I'm like, you guys must go to like a Zen mode and be like, okay, I'm just gonna zone out and just focus on this, and that's it. I'm like, I could not. That cramping, oh my god. I don't even want to think about that anymore.
The funniest part is when you try and unlock your phone and you have like this indent in your thumb and it won't recognize it. You're like, come on, it's
Thank
me.
God for facial recognition.
Well,
Yeah.
well, not with masks, but yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would agree with Rich. So when I've only been in the collecting and cutting, so I've been collecting for a year and a half, cutting for just about a year, maybe a little more. And I'm still new, like there's a lot I still learn. I still mess up on a lot of stuff. But so when I can't remember, I saw a random post on Instagram and it had a deck cut in it. Like it was a picture of someone's collection and there was a cut in it. So I was like, well, that's kind of crazy. So I think I'd read in the comments or something about the cut. I saw someone mention it, and it was your Instagram, Rich, that it was tagged in. And it was one of yours. I can't remember. I don't even remember what it was. So you were the first one I'd ever looked at, and I was like, wow, this is some cool stuff. Like I should do this. So then I went out. I didn't have self-healing mats at the time. I had just standard knives, and I was like, I just tried a basic bicycle deck, and same thing. Hand cramped. I was like, God, that sucks. Like, cranked it out in like an hour. It looked horrible. I still have it. It looks terrible. And so now I was like, well, shoot, like I want to try this again. So I looked for something a little better, and then I started asking questions. Came across other cutters in the community. And and it kind of went from there. So, but looking back on it, it was so I always checked your Instagram to see like what you were doing, kind of like what people were looking at, what was popular. Because I didn't know cards. I was like, I thought it was just bicycle cards, right? Same thing. Bought a Blue Monarch for one of my first Theory 11 decks. So I was just like, this is crazy. Like, where is he getting all these decks from? All this kind of stuff. So then it was like, okay, here's what he's doing. Like, I gotta do this. Like, I'm gonna, he's here, and I'm gonna try to be here. And I still feel like you're here and I'm here, and we're kind of just climbing the ladder. So, but yeah, I've never understood, I've always grown up playing sports. I was also a band nerd. I was a jazz band, and, everything I've always been in was team building. You encourage the people you're around, you encourage people with the same similarities and interests, and you grow together, right? Mm-hmm. And yeah, as I started getting more into it, and like I said, I think I'm decent at it now. I'm definitely not the best out there, but as my cuts started getting better, they started getting more attention, and that would start bringing in the attention of other cutters, and that's kind of when it, like you were saying, you were threatened with lawsuits. I was threatened with the same thing. We've had this conversation on the side. It's I'm almost a mirror image of your story. But it's
so stupid. It's so stupid. I'm sorry. Like that. When I've heard this from John or from other deck cutters as well, and you just start hearing similar people over and over again being involved in this, and you're like, what are these people's problems? Like, why? Yeah. Like, I don't understand it. It's like you guys are just trying to make a healthy, not competition, but more like a healthy environment. Be like, hey, let's push the art, because it's art. Let's push this art to the next level. How can we make this better? And when people try to make this like, oh, I'm the best at this, only follow me, and I'm like, no, I'm sorry, you're not. And then the problem is, like, when you start getting there and you get one of their cuts and you actually look at it, you're like, huh. you actually look at the cut, and then you're like, wait, how many cards did this person cut in total with borders? And you're like, huh.
I maybe am guilty at looking at cuts, and I have a couple friends and all that I trust on Instagram, and I'll talk to my wife and whatnot, and I'll make some comments. But honestly, it always comes down to, I can almost make the same comment across the board for most, I would say 90% of the cuts that I see out there, and it drives me crazy. Like, if you want to stack so many cards together that you can't even see the space, and like that's how you're going to do it, you're going to create some stability in that design that way, like that's fine, do whatever you want to do. But my biggest gripe that I see, and I look at, oh my gosh, dog, He never uses a squeak toy. The biggest thing that I always go and I always see is to clean up your deck, clean up the cuts. Like you take these pictures and you can see where like a little bit of the paper has been cut away. And I'm like, just take a split second with a sharp knife and just trim it up. Like
Yeah,
so
throw a
many
new
of these
blade on
decks.
there.
Yeah, just throw a new blade on there. You know, you said you went through like well, you tried once and you went through like 2 or 3 blades in a deck. I don't think I go through any less than like 8 in a deck, and that would be kind of easy. It's just like keep your blade sharp. But even then, I get done with some stuff and I go through and I take pictures and I'm looking at my pictures and I'm like, I
Yep.
didn't even see that. And I'll go back and I'm
Yep.
like, nope, I got to
Yeah,
fix that. Like that's the thing.
Yeah,
I'm
and then
like,
you're
just
like,
clean it
man, now I
up.
got to
Yeah.
deconstruct this thing.
Yeah, it's like you're part perfectionist because you're like you're putting it's also your reputation you're putting out there. You're like I'm putting myself out into the world. This is how people I want people to see me as. So
Yeah.
why not be anything less than perfect in your eyes? I would say. You know, granted, some cutters might think that looks great, but then it's like you might want to also, like you guys said, you have to be conscious that there's going to be criticism and maybe a little feedback. Be like, hey, the cut might not be that perfect. And I've talked to John about this on other things. I'm like, I've seen some cuts on Instagram, and I'm like, you zoom in, and you're like, wait, it's not that clean, and you're
Yeah.
like, but then all of a sudden you start seeing it's like not clean, or it's off, or something just doesn't look right, and then John would point it out, be like, yeah, you see the paper, it's not a perfect cut. Take it,
Yeah.
like you were just saying, take an extra blade, cut it, and I'm like, why wouldn't people do that? Like I used to draw. I was an artist. I actually wanted to go to. I wanted to be a cartoonist when I was younger, because I'm the old.
Me too.
I'm an old school guy. Like I prefer the old school. Each frame done by hand, not on computer graphics. That was my whole thing. And when I used to draw, I would always do my sketches, and then go back and outline everything and make sure everything was crisp and clean because that was my art. But like you said, it's like take that little extra second, an extra knife, in your case, and fix it up.
Yeah. Yeah. When I first started, I mean, some of my cuts looking back now, like I thought, I'd finish it up and put together, and I'm like, that looks pretty good. Like I think the fourth cut I ever did was the NPH deck by Theory 11,
Oh wow!
and I did a double-sided cut, which I later found out. I think you started that, didn't you, Rich? Cutting both sides of the tuck case.
I did not. Actually, the
Okay.
first person I saw do that was 52 and Tuck.
Okay.
And the reason why is my original plan when I got into this. I've done a couple double-sided. My original plan is I want you to see a standard deck of cards, and then when you turn it around, there it is. So even if you had this like up on a shelf or something, if you had a mirror behind it, you would see behind it, or this way you would have it. So my theory and my way of doing it was I always wanted it to look like a standard deck of cards until you turned it around.
Right.
But 52 and Tuck did a ton of just insane double. I think he even did at some point some quad cuts. Like
Damn.
it was some cool stuff he was doing.
Well, so when I first started, like I said, the only people I knew of that did deck cuts were you and Kyle. So I didn't, and I didn't I looked at your guys' profiles. I didn't study what you did. But I had the idea of doing a double-sided tuck case. So I did the NPH deck, and I used the Ace of Spades underneath and kind of inlaid it a little bit and cut it out. And then I remember I posted it, and I got so much hate about copying another cutter who I'd never even heard of. But I remember, I'm sorry, that's a whole other path, but talking about lines and all of that when you actually look at it, I remember I finished that cut. I was like, man, this looks pretty sick. And now, if I put it next to a cut now, I'm like, those lines and corners, I mean, that looks awful. I would not sell this if anybody offered me any kind of money. I wouldn't even probably give it to you. But yeah, I mean, and there's still times where I'll finish a cut and I'll look at it and I'll take pictures and I'm like, holy cow, how did I miss that corner? Or there's a piece of white fuzz shown on some point somewhere where I could have got a lot better. So yeah, then you're in there trying to doctor it up. But yeah, it's I always try to make sure if I post something, I always at least have a couple photos where I'm zoomed in on it. So where the person looking at it doesn't have to zoom the picture in, they're already there. And it just makes me wonder, and we've talked about this before, why, if you're going to assemble a cut and show it off, why would you not look at it? But you can't be calling out people for their quality of cuts and And this, if if yours is looking, yeah, subpar, you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, and
but
I don't write anything down just because I don't want to. There's no good way on a post to put something that doesn't sound snarky. Like, hey man, you really need to clean up your cut. Like, I'm not the
yeah,
guy that's going to come in and be like, I'm the master at this whole thing, and this is what you need to do. You're a disgrace. Like, all you guys should just stop. But that's not what it is. And there's no way to like, unless that person comes to me and ask, which I have had people come up and hit me up and be like, hey, what can I do to improve on things? And then I can approach that thing. But you can't post anything without seeming like I'm high and mighty
right.
and all you peasants down there, this is what you need to
mhm.
do to get your cut right. So I don't. That's why I have a couple people that I'm like, here, look at this. And then I'm like, okay, rant over. I'm good.
Yep.
Yeah, it's more like, hey, if you know someone and you're like, hey, you might want to, like you were just saying, you don't want to post anything that's snarky, but you might message them separately off a post and be like, direct message them if they're a good friend of yours and be like, hey, I noticed this. You might want to double check it. It's a constructive criticism, not being snarky or anything, just being constructive. And some people be like, oh, great. Other people might be like, well, I know better than you because I've been
Yeah.
doing it because I've been doing it longer. I'm like, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter how
Yeah.
the length of time that you've been doing something. It's more of like you see something, you're just trying to help,
Yeah.
and then somebody might take it as like, oh my god, you are an asshole. I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm just trying to be constructive. Like when I mean, John probably has seen this when I posted on Instagram about the Day of the Dead deck by Fulton. I got a lot of hate back
Oh yeah.
on that because I didn't like the deck. I didn't like what he did, and I called him out on it. And I had people that thought they were high and mighty, and there were fanboys and fangirls of Brad coming at me and threatening me. And I'm like, fine, you want to talk about it? Let's talk. I have no problem getting on an IG live or on a podcast and like let's have a civil debate or a civil conversation, because at the end of the day, I just want to talk. I'm cool.
Yeah.
I'm cool with talking. I'm cool if maybe we might not see eye to eye on certain topics, but hey, doesn't mean I'm gonna devalue your opinions, and I would hope that you would not devalue my opinions, because our opinions are personal.
Yep.
But yeah, it's just so stupid that people do that, and it's like so high school, junior high ish. And then you have the bully, you have the main bully, and then you have all the groupies of the bully that
The
think
cronies.
yes.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
all I'm thinking right now is the Christmas Story.
Yeah, Frog.
Yeah, like that's all I'm thinking.
Froggy?
I think it was Froggy. Yeah, that's all I'm thinking about right now.
Yep.
But it's just so stupid, and it's just
And it's unfortunate too, because
Yeah,
it's like
'cause-
the community as a whole is awesome. I mean,
exactly.
I've met a lot of amazing people, had a lot of awesome conversation, and I've seen a lot of beautiful decks of cards.
Yeah,
And there's really no reason to ever bring anyone down for that. I mean, this
No.
is in the end, it's a box full of paper that you paid money for.
Yep.
And it's a hobby that a lot of people enjoy and sharing it, and that's
Yeah.
how it should be.
I mean, it's what you guys do is basically taking the artwork that a creator or an artist has put onto a piece of paper and try to enhance it by cutting it and making it a flat image into a three-dimensional image. Which,
Yep.
granted, a lot of people don't have that mentality or don't have that thought process to do. And just the fact that you guys do that is like, why the hell would anybody want to bring you guys down? Like, you're doing something that probably people have thought of but never really done. Like, they're like, oh, I thought of that, but did you actually, do it? No.
Yeah.
It's just crazy.
That's the
Well, a lot
world
of it
we
goes
live in
back,
now.
like,
What,
John, you were
Rich?
talking about like your early decks and whatnot, and as much as I don't scroll down and look at my own work, I have not taken down any of the decks that I have done. And you go back to like those first dozen or so decks, and I like cringe. I'm like, I want to redo like those. I'm almost embarrassed to have those up, but I can always redo them anytime I want, right? I just find the deck and you know what? I'm going to cut it a better way this time. But I think it's important that I'm not trying to get on people that are new or just coming into this thing and being like, look, these need to be perfect cuts and they need to, look a certain way and they need to be 100% like this, because we all start somewhere. And the only reason why I haven't deleted any of my original posts is, well, A is for timestamp, because I still have people saying that I copy other people or whatever it is that they're going to say. But B,
Yep.
if you actually go all the way back to my first deck that I ever cut, which was Archangels, um, you can watch the progression of my thought process and my art to where it is now. Like there is a definite starting point
Oh yeah.
and there is an ending point. And I had like no reference to go off of when I started. So some of those first decks are really, really minimal. Like I'm like, wow, what did I do? Like 2 cards in that thing, kind of a thing. And I don't think I did anything less than 7, but it's still like only 7. This super top secret deck that I can't show right now, that's just outside of camera's eye. I ended up doing 26 layers on this thing, which is the most I've ever done anywhere. And I'm like, did I overdo it? Did I underdo it? I don't even know. We'll see how it goes. But you have that progression, and you have to be somewhere. Not all my lines were perfect, but I had somebody telling me, dude, you got to keep your knife sharp. Like I started looking at actual okay, I'm not trying to devalue what we're doing by saying actual paper cutting artists, but you go
Yeah.
on there and there are people that take sheets of paper and do it like
Yeah.
amazing. I've seen stuff that I'm like,
Yep.
it's but it's like I, it's so, they make me feel like I'm finger painting in kindergarten and they're writing their doctoral thesis. Like what they're doing is just that high a caliber. And I started following them and I just asked them questions. None of them were doing cards. They're all doing their own. I mean, like they have like their own shows and whatnot, kind of crazy art.
Yeah.
And that was the one thing, was like, just you got to keep a sharp blade and you got to go from there. And so there's a progression to go through and everyone's got learning to do. So if anyone's out there watching right now and you want to try cutting, don't let anyone stop you. Give it a
Yeah.
shot. Just know that
Yeah,
your hand's
exactly.
going to hurt. You're going to have a dent in your finger. You're going to be like, why did I get into this, when you're about halfway in? And now you're like, do I stop? Do I just throw this whole thing away? Just finish it out.
Yeah,
Finish it out
stick
and
with
see
it.
what happens.
And message both of us. Message me and Rich if you have questions or anything. If you want recommendations on gear to use or even decks to start with, man. I'm like Rich said. I've had people. I mean, Tone is one of them, and Rich. I don't know if you've met Tone yet or not. He calls
Who
himself
knows I
Dutch
have?
Cut. He's Dutch Cut decks.
Oh,
He just started cutting.
yes.
So I kind of I don't want to say I took him under my wing, but he started asking me questions. I recommended some gear to him, where to start with cuts, and then just kind of went on. But yeah, like, I mean, man, if you want to get started, like you said, everyone's got to start somewhere. If I can help them start, that's fantastic, awesome. I look forward to seeing what you do. I'll probably send you a few decks to cut. Like, yeah, all for it, and stick with it. Yeah, like you said, your hand's gonna hurt, and you're gonna be like 10 cuts in and going, "What the hell? What am I doing?"
I honestly only did 4 deck cuts, and those are the only 4 deck cuts I will ever do in my life, because my hand cramped like there was no tomorrow, and I'm like, screw this. This is not for me. But again, everybody's
you
different.
get yourself something like this.
Yeah, he's got a crazy. See, I'm still sticking with. I've got just the soft handle cells. I know. I love this though. I don't know what it is.
My hand hurts just looking at that thing.
Well, I see your knife all the time. I'm like, man, that thing looks like it would be awkward.
Look, I still have that thing.
Yeah. See, I love them. I don't know
use
why.
this just to put my labels on, because it's a straight, this thing, and I'm working up on a post to go through it. The company's name is Ergo Kiwi, and this knife is this big, giant, chunky, like it fits over my hand like I'm writing a pencil. You can have it this way, you can turn it up this way. It's magnetic. You can just like flip it out. The blade sticks to it, so I don't stab myself when I pick it up. This has been one of the best investments that I have done, because I got tired of my hand cramping up so much. Not to say that this one was cheap. This is a coat wood, and I think this handle itself, without the case or anything else, I think the handle itself was like, after shipping, almost $100. Like, not cheap, but
John's looking at it now like,
in it.
John's looking at that right now. Is like, okay, how can I machine that?
Well, if you don't mind, I'm gonna look up that company because I'm always. I mean, I'm always looking for another knife to use.
They also have this one. If you can see, this is actually it's called Paper Stone. It's actually paper, but it's actually heavier than this wood that I have here. This one's got a number 2 blade on it, but Ergo Kiwi. And if you, I mean, you can let them know that I sent you that way. I don't know if there's anything special that you get from it, but you can also buy like these cases that they fit in, and then like you just toss this thing in, and it fits in there, and everything's all magnetic. That was the one thing. I looked at my wife, and I was like, okay, if I'm actually going to sell these things, and I'm going to be doing this for longer than like a half dozen cuts, I need to step it up. And I thought stepping it up was going from that all metal one to the one with the little rubber grip on it. Right. You know, for like $2 more. And then I don't even know how it came. Oh, one of the paper artists, I saw her using it, and I was like, oh my gosh, what is that handle? And then I looked up the company, and I like told my wife, I'd like to make a purchase.
Yeah.
Like,
always gotta go through
everything cleared from her. But just to be like, this is like, you're gonna see $100 come out. I think it was 120 or something, because I got the case and like some other things with it. And I was just like, I'm gonna spoil myself. And she was like, all supportive. If you're going to do it and it's going to help yourself out, then go for it. Yeah. And they've been great.
But that's also, I mean, it's actually funny how you were saying, oh, I have to talk to the wife. I mean, everybody, I mean, I'm divorced, but we all have that, you know, the missus that we all talk to and be like, hey, yeah, so just so you know, like, this is going to happen.
It's kind of funny you say that, because so when I first started collecting, my wife thought I was crazy, right? She's like, you're doing what?
I mean, John, you're still crazy. You're still crazy.
Yes.
But we're not saying you're not.
No, yeah, we're just saying you're now to the next level.
But it's funny. So, like I said, I've been collecting about a year and a half, and as I go through this and I get different decks in, and I find, like, you know, there's some that she might like, or I do a cut that she might like. I'm noticing her become more and more interested, so that now, like, hey, I need to buy a knife, or hey, I've got a half brick coming in from Theory 11. Can you watch for the package for me? Like that conversation's become a lot easier now. So she's finally getting warmed up. So, but yes, I'm. If you're cool with it, not to, like, you know, not to copy your knife or anything, but man, that's because I don't mind. You know, I've got big hands. I mean, like, compared to this knife, right? My hand is huge.
Hold on. Where's that? Hold that up again. Palm up to the finger.
Yeah.
So.
Oh yeah, jeez.
I'm a little bit bigger hand than you.
Yeah.
This is a cramping nightmare. It's not even about copying me or not. There's different woods that you can get, but you owe it to your hand. Otherwise, you're gonna have to stop sooner than you want to. You've got to be comfortable with it.
Yeah, I mean, so right now, like, I don't really cramp much. I'll usually stop before my hand starts cramping anyways, but yeah, like I always thought that, I mean, yeah, like you said, I started with one of these, which is awful. I don't even think I've taken the cap off of this thing in like almost a year, to this guy. But I have an artist background, so I've always held pencils and drawings and drafting and all of that. So I learned through all that to hold things very loosely and not death grip on stuff, which helps with the cramping. But man, if I could find something like that with more contour to your hand,
do it.
Yeah, that's game changing right there.
It's they even might have something where, like, if you don't like it, like, you can return it. It does take a little bit just because of the magnetic in there, so there's a tiny little bit of give in there until the lock comes in. And like, honestly, I see. When I first got it, I was like, oh, this is terrible. I hate this thing. I can't. And then I was like, no, I'm going to do a deck with it, and I'm going to go. And now I'm like, I won't cut. If I don't have this handle on me, I won't. It just won't happen. I've gone 4 or 5 hours straight with this thing and not cramped even a little bit.
Well, it probably trained your mind, because there's one thing I've noticed when you're cutting, when you really get into it, you don't realize how hard you end up pressing on your knife sometimes.
Oh yeah.
And if that blade is kind of popping out just a little bit,
all your boards end up all.
Well, that's one thing. Before this conversation ends up being over, I noticed, because I watch some of your lives once in a while, and I noticed that you use a very small mat. Is there a reason? And I only ask that because in my workspace, like, I have a big mat, and I enjoy it because I don't have to turn it and all that. Do you have I guess what's your reasoning behind that? Why preference the small
Um,
versus the big?
so I don't really have a desk where I can work.
Okay.
So I have this is kind of like I either have the table behind me and I can kind of set it up where that chair is over there, or for the most part, I use this. This is kind of like the bar island part of the kitchen. Like my stove is right there, my fridge is right there, sliding
Okay.
doors there. This comes out about 6 feet. So the amount of space that I have is small. Sometimes so I started with a big mat and it's hard because you work in one spot and then as it starts getting its divots and whatnot, then you have to move over and then you start moving all over the mat. The little things start like sticking to your hands,
Yeah.
little bits of
Yep.
mat.
That's what I'm dealing with
Um,
right now.
but it's kind of twofold. One is so if I'm cutting on this and I have my card coming in and I go to slide and it hits one of the grooves that's already in there, I can easily just move the whole mat around with the card and I don't have to worry about getting out of its way. Like I can either move the card or I can move the mat with the card depending on what I need. The second one was I actually would take this to work. Like I said, it was a rural fire department that I was working at, and so we really didn't get too many night calls. And so after the day of work was done, and we'd spend 48 hours there, I had to have something that was portable. And so
Okay.
this just fits the
Yeah,
size of the
it's
card.
perfect.
And if it was a little bit bigger, it'd be nice because then I'd be able to stick my hand down on the mat when I want the mat not to move, but I've been using this enough that I've just kind of gone around with it. And I can order them. It's a lot cheaper when you go
Yeah.
smaller, right? Like I can use the front and back of this as opposed to spending $50 on a big mat. I can get like a half dozen of these for, I don't know, maybe 20, $30. And then as soon as it's done, I just throw out that little piece and I just go get others. I don't have to worry about where am I keeping this giant mat.
Right. Right. Yeah, it makes sense.
Makes sense.
I like it. Cool.
The little
Yeah.
tips of the trade.
Yeah, and that's
Tips
not
of the
like
trade.
like I said, I've only been cutting for about a year, so I'm a sponge.
Well,
Soak it up.
I just realized we're almost at the hour mark, but we haven't done one thing. I don't know if John has told you about this, or if you've seen our Instagram, our posts or whatnot. We always do a deck check. So,
Sure.
I mean, I don't know if you handle decks or whatnot, but we always fidget or any deck that you're working on. Maybe not the top secret deck. Um,
I mean, if you want to show that one, hey.
hey, that is,
I would do all the showing I would after Carter's Con.
Perfect.
That's awesome. No, but we usually do a deck check saying what are you using or what other cut are you doing right now for your case. Like me personally, like right now I've been fiddling with the Black Roses Immergrun deck just because I had a handy and I was like, oh, let me just grab a deck because I'm always fiddling or fidgeting with cards all the time. What about you, John? What have you? Because I saw you've been playing around with some cards over there.
Yeah. So, and I don't know. So this is my very first sour experience with a Kickstarter, and I'm kind of forcing myself to get them out of the tuck box anyway. Rich, I'm sure you've seen many posts about it, but it's the Shadows and Dust campaign. Did you ever see anything about
That's
this?
the one that was
Nothing like
the marking on it. Like
there's actually print on this tuck box. Like
I remember.
supposed to be embossed
I
and
initially backed that Kickstarter, but because the pictures look amazing and
they looked fantastic, right?
Didn't
So
turn out.
I backed for a standard and I backed for a limited, just one of each, nothing crazy, just because I wanted. It was my very first Kickstarter I had ever done. So I was like, I didn't want to dive into it too much. Like, I don't really know how this Kickstarter works. Like, I don't want to screw it out of money. It was $30 worth of cards. Awesome. Took them a year, and they kept throwing all the blame on EPCC for taking too long to print. Oh, they lost something, this, that. So I'm trying to kind of like them. It's not really working. And then this is my next cut. This is just personally for me because I think it will look cool when it's done. It's the hollow gilded wheels from Art of Play.
Yeah.
So this is my next one up. I just finished a half a brick for Craig for his site, and then so now I'm taking a break from a couple commissions to do one for myself. So
That's not something that I do. I do like a lot of people. They'll ask every once in a while, like, "Hey, what do you have in stock?" I'm like, "Nothing." Almost all of mine are straight commission. I think I have one. Hi, my name is Mark that I cut like a year or so ago. I kept that one. My wife has the Red Fox V1, and I did have a David Blaine Private Reserve, but I actually sent that out. That was I had a mystery cut deck giveaway, and that was the one that I ended up giving away. I actually kind of retooled it. I took it out of its package when because I'd cut that early on and redone it. But outside of that, I don't have cuts for myself. And sometimes I feel like maybe I should, but I just don't. I really like how this Fulton, the Day of the Dead is coming out, or how it came out. But it's probably gonna sell, and because I always think, oh, you know what? If I'm gonna do one of these, like I'm gonna do this a little bit different, or this
Right.
didn't quite work out the way that I wanted to, and then I end up like not having it, or I have all these commissions to do, and so I applaud that you take the time and you want to have something in there. I mean, it'd be like I'm a painter and I don't keep any of my paintings. It just sounds kind of dumb. Dumb on me.
No, I mean
Um,
everybody has their reasons for it though.
the so you're talking about Kickstarter. This is a deck that I have yet to start cutting, but it was one of the only I think I've been involved with two or three Kickstarters. I'm not the biggest fan, maybe it's been four. Not the biggest fan of the kickstarting thing just because like when I did these decks, pricing had changed, my style had changed, like a lot had changed. But I have quite a bit of these to do. I think I have like a brick and a half of them, but they are, and I don't, I'm still trying to figure it out and reach out to everybody, but they are um, Jack Penny's last Kickstarter, the oh my gosh, I just forgot the name of it. Sensu, the Sensu
Mm,
decks. I don't know if
Oh
anyone
yeah,
started
yeah,
getting
yeah.
any of these yet, but like there's like this slip cover over it, and this thing is all sorts of
yeah.
Jeez.
shiny
That's
and
crazy,
fantastic.
but it looks so cool.
That's gonna
And
honestly, that's gonna be a, in my opinion, I don't know how you guys can look at that and make a cut. I'm
yeah,
like,
here's the back, if you can even see it.
Yeah.
oh god,
Oh, that's gonna,
It's
man, that's
just
crazy.
it's a mess of things that I he had to actually Jack's a super nice guy if you haven't ever talked with him. He kind of had to break everything down. I was like, I don't even know what I'm looking at here. He had to break it down for me,
and
but
he
he
lives in
wasn't.
He lives in Japan right now, right?
Yes, yes,
Yes,
he does.
yeah, I
Yep.
remember this deck. I remember this deck coming out on Kickstarter. I just don't, I didn't back it because it wasn't my style at the time of like the style
The
of cards I
cr-
like. But it just looks beautiful. But I'm just like, I don't know how you look at that and be like, oh, let me try this. I don't get it. Like I'm like looking at that and
the
I'm like, holy shit.
the craziest thing about this is that if we have time and if this gets edited out, then whatever. But the cards themselves are like offset.
What?
Yeah,
You see, like there's
yeah.
image here and image
It's
there,
like a
just kind of
Holy
card.
offset.
It's like a picture of a
And
card of a
so,
card
card.
yeah, so see if I can
stuff.
get this.
It's so
So when
cool.
you
I
line up
love it.
and fan the cards and you line up all the extra um,
Yes.
artwork on the
Yep.
sides, every single suit has something different. Oh, that was terrible. I told you I'm not a cardist, right? Why am I going to Cardistry Con? Um, let's see if I can if I can even show this to you. So when you get it and you turn it all out, it creates its own image.
Oh
Yeah.
That's just the
wow.
edges
It's such
of
a
the
smart.
cards.
I mean, such a
It's
smart design.
fantastic.
That is
So
Yeah.
that's what
insane.
I've been staring at and going like, this is awesome. This is cool. I don't know what I'm going to do. The only weird thing about it is that when you get to your court cards, like here's three of the court cards. I don't know what's a king, a queen, a joker. I don't know what suit is what because it's just kind of a random card.
Huh.
So that's kind of the weird thing. It's definitely not something that you're going to go and play with. But
Yeah,
if
that's
you
definitely
want
a
to
collection deck.
display this deck, like you know those
Oh
stupid
man.
plastic. If you're playing poker and you can put your cards in and it'll like hold your fan up, kind of a
Yeah,
thing that you
your
did as a
fan hold.
kid.
Yeah.
Get a fan hold for these, and you could actually have an awesome display of these up there. I mean, they're just, it's super
Well,
cool. Like his,
I
I don't know how. how we
I
did
think
it.
I think the idea, because I remember when this came out too. I think the idea was when it was fanned like that, it was to actually mimic those Japanese fans because those have extremely intricate designs on them, and that was like the concept of when it was a fan, it was actually a fan. It's supposed to look like a fan.
And
I
but
think that's what it was.
but he actually also, along with like this cover that's also got a whole bunch of cutouts in it already.
Oh wow.
He there was a part when you actually got the deck where he found somebody that made like those. I'm gonna butcher what the name is, so I'll just say that they're kind of like those room dividers where it's like
Oh
like
Yeah.
a three piece.
Yep.
And there's actually one of those that goes on top of this that's attached that actually
Huh.
like
What?
folds out. It's nuts. He got this thing thought about it, and he contacted I want to say half a dozen plus artists and commissioned each of us to do a different part to make the deck the way that he wanted it to be. It's just
That's
it's
crazy.
out there. It is
The
so cool.
That is
the
crazy.
tough thing too, and I know we're running out of time, but I think Rich will probably agree with me on this. Is one of the tough things about doing cuts too is knowing how much time and energy and thoughts go into these decks. I don't want to say it puts a lot of pressure, but it kind of puts pressure on you when you're cutting it to go, okay, like, I'm trying to make this look exceptional and extra. I really don't want to butcher this because, like I said, the card community, everyone knows everyone, and creators see content, and you can tag people, and you don't want them pulling up a post and going, "Oh, somebody cut my deck," and then they pull up and they're like, "What happened? What did you do to my artwork?" You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, looking at that deck, man, like
I could only
I
imagine.
can't
I'm just
wait.
like,
I can't
oh,
wait.
Oh, I'm just like
I can't wait
cringe.
either. I can't wait to see what I
Oh,
come
man.
up with because I
That's
have
gonna be
no
so
idea.
cool, though. It's gonna be so cool. Yeah.
Well, Rich, first off, I want to say thank you for joining us today. It definitely was
Absolutely.
awesome to get to meet you, and I've seen you around. I've liked your stuff. Finally, get to meet you and talk to you, which is awesome. Also, guys, if you're watching this on YouTube, there'll be in the description below all Rich's, anything you want to go check him out down there. If you have any questions, hit it in the comments below. Let us know if you want to ask him something. We'll get back to him, and then maybe he'll post on Instagram what you guys thought.
Yeah. Give him a follow for sure.
Definitely give him a follow. Definitely give him a follow. It's worth it. Trust me. And give
Yeah.
him a follow too. Whoever. There. Him. Yeah. Exactly.
Somewhere.
Somewhere
around there.
Somewhere in the ether. Somewhere in the ether. Well, Rich, first off, thank you so much again. And guys,
Oh, thanks for having me.
on to the next one. Later.
Yep. See ya.